Riptide, the largest annual Smash tournament in Ohio since 2021, returned for its third year in 2023. While Sandusky may seem like an unusual place to hold a Smash Major, the event's reputation, massive indoor water park, and nearby roller coasters at Cedar Point keep attendees from all across the country returning every year. It's a particularly special event to me as well. Apart from it being Ohio's only major, it's also the event where I had one of my biggest breakout performances on the big stage, nearly beating MK Leo 2 years earlier. With such an important event occurring within driving distance of Cincinnati, I wasn't about to miss it. With the summer of Smash coming to a close, I was pretty exhausted in the weeks between SmashCon and Riptide. I was traveling for Smash tournaments more weekends than I wasn't, and while my placings weren't bad overall, I wasn't seeing the improvement I was hoping for, and my outlook on the game as a whole was getting pretty bleak. I love Smash and I loved competing, but I was beginning to doubt that I really love Smash Ultimate. I love playing Zero Suit Samus and Pokemon Trainer, but maining them in 2023 sometimes feels like choosing to fight Dark Souls bosses with no armors or weapons. After a disappointing finish at GOML 2023, and a better yet still unsatisfying run at Super Smash Con 2023, my goal of top 8ing a major felt far away. In the weeks leading up to Riptide, I decided to put in some overtime. I finally decided to get coaching from Egas, a Tennessee Palutena player who had been recommended to me multiple times. Together we talked over some of my issues, and he was able to identify some recurring problems in my gameplay. Most notably, my desperate need to feel like I was in control of the game caused me to play over aggressively, especially when I'm down or felt like a lead was slipping away from me, among many other things. With this new perspective, I set off to practice more Wi-Fi and review more VODs to patch the many holes in my play. Only time would tell if my ideas would be enough, and I didn't have much of it. Riptide weekend soon arrived. Would I miss out on day 3 of yet another major, or would I finally conquer my demons and achieve my goal of making top 8? While I never felt more prepared for a major in terms of practice, I could have done a lot more to prepare for traveling. When Thursday rolled around, I hadn't even done laundry for the weekend, much less packed anything. By mistake, I had also left my hours open for Metafy all week, and a student booked me early in the afternoon. Fortunately, one of our members of our carpool was a friend from DFW, whose plane wasn't going to fly in until well after the coaching session was scheduled to end, so I still looked to be on schedule. The session went well, and I managed to get everything I needed for the weekend together before driving around Cincinnati to gather the carpool members for the journey to Cleveland. We say Cleveland because there was a pre-local featuring many of the top players, such as Chase, Lima, and Atata, going on at one of the venues there Thursday night. I like to take any chances I can get to play the best of the best, so we signed up to play as well. Unfortunately, Kyle, our friend from DFW, had his plane get held up, and we weren't able to leave the city early enough to be there on time. Halfway up, we decided to give up on the pre-local and just go straight to the Kalahari. Once we arrived at the venue, we checked in, hauled our luggage to the hotel room through a sudden storm, and went down to the venue to meet our Smash friends who had showed up for the smaller pre-local that the venue had also been hosting that night. I wanted to visit the water park, but we were already too late, so I instead played some money matches and some friendlies before the venue closed and we went to bed. Despite the long, stressful previous day of traveling, I didn't sleep very well that night. Unfortunately, while many majors start half or all of singles bracket on Friday, Riptide saves the entire day for side events only, meaning I could focus on having fun and getting practice rather than being in peak condition for singles. But first, I had to get dressed for the day. Emma, a regular cosplayer at majors, had plans for Riptide as well, and this time around, they involved me and another Ohio friend, Winter. We even got a picture with Captain Pikmin, who is also editing this video. We wore the Pikmin cosplays throughout doubles, which wasn't a very long time, but it was a fun time. And we won our stream match thanks to a 6 save from Emma in Game 1, so as far as you viewers are concerned, we did great. Squad Strike went a little better. I always enjoy Squad Strike because it gives me the chance to play characters that I think are a lot of fun, but don't really believe in, like Robin, as well as also giving me the chance to practice more serious characters I might consider using in the future, like Wolf. I ended up placing 9th, losing a close set to Mutes and a less close set to Icy Mist. I actually think the Mutes set was really important for me, despite the set occurring in a side event. For one thing, me and Mute were projected to play in winners if I avoided getting upset Saturday, meaning any information I could pull on his Peach was going to be useful to me. Secondly, I kinda choked the set away after getting an early lead in a favorable matchup in the endgame of Game 3. Anyone who's ever been in the position of making an upset knows when you have the realization of how possible it is for you to win, how much more desperate you get to find that last big opening which actually just plays into an experienced opponent's hands. I definitely let it get to me, despite the relatively low-stress environment of Squad Strike. But in hindsight, I'm glad it happened. That desperation of a lead slipping away or being down was exactly what Egaz and me had talked about. and it would come up many more times this weekend, and this set made it a fresh memory in my head for me to be more aware of when the real bracket began. After the bracket, me, Emma, and the rest of our carpool went to get food, and I spent the rest of the day practicing and playing money matches before going back to our hotel room. In hindsight, this was the day I really should have tried to go to the water park, but I didn't know at the time exactly how busy the rest of my weekend was going to be, and I didn't want to have any regrets about my performance tomorrow over missed opportunities to prepare more. After a much better night's sleep, I woke up Saturday in the best condition I could hope for. Today was tournament day. No more goofing around inside brackets. My anxiety, like before every major bracket, was at an all-time high. There was a good chance this would be the only day of the singles bracket I would get to play all weekend. They were running both round 1 and round 2 pools all the way up until top 16. Rather than waiting for all round 1 pools to finish before starting round 2, Riptide Saturday would have every player that made it out of round 1 pools play round 2 immediately after. I was in the latest wave of round 1 pools, starting at 6 PM, meaning unless I got knocked out early, I would be playing until 10 PM. A brutal schedule, especially considering I just wanted to get it out of the way so I could enjoy the rest of my weekend. It wasn't all bad though. The late schedule meant I got to spend most of the early afternoon watching Pittsburgh Regionals, a Pokemon tournament, in the hotel room. This might seem lazy, but it helped distract me from thinking about the bracket, and I didn't want to burn myself out by playing for hours before bracket even started. Around half an hour before my pool was scheduled to start, I turned off the stream and I went down to warm up. I got to play a best of 5 money match in the friendlies room before I checked in and waited to be called. And I didn't have to wait long. My first opponent was a Jigglypuff player, who was a much stronger of an opponent than I would have expected for a round 1, but I knew better than to sleep on anyone at a major of this size. Fortunately, the matchup was good, and I knew exactly why. Jigglypuff, like many multi-jump characters, struggles against characters with good vertical mobility, like ZSS. On top of that, almost all of her preferred methods of approaching are aerial, and with moves that lose to Zair. Even worse, she's one of the easiest characters to kill off of Zair due to her floatiness and round hurtbox. I won the set 2-0, but I could feel my anxiety impacting my play, and I was about to suffer for it. The next set went much worse. My next opponent was an NDVA player with the tagged Zane. No, not the melee one, a different one who played Terry. Terry is one of the scariest characters for a player like me to run into early in bracket. He's a great example of one of those Dark Souls boss type characters that punish me hard for trying to play the game in the way that I normally prefer. I win the first game, but it was closer than I would have liked. The second game seemed to be going similarly, until this time I start panicking with a lead once he got go on his last stock. He hits a go confirm, and my stock disappears at 70, winning my opponent game 2. Smelling blood, a crowd of his friends and other players eager to witness an upset gathered behind us for game 3. This is the last situation I wanted to be in. If I lost here, it would have been one of the biggest upsets of the tournament, putting me in losers far earlier than I was projected to, not only making a run twice as difficult, but also ruining any preparation I had done for players that I was projected to encounter much later. Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for my opponent in the crowd, game 3 wasn't much to look at. I started the game with 2 quick death combos and closed it out to 3 stock. I breathed a sigh of relief, went to the bathroom, and calmed myself down. I had dodged a bullet, but my bracket wasn't getting any easier. My next set was to make it out of round 1 pools on winner's side, and my opponent was one of the best Mii Sword Fighter players in the world, Scrubbed Out. I was terrified of Scrubbed Out. My first experience with him was watching him play at a Kentucky regional we had both attended right when COVID lockdowns were ending. Despite never having heard of him prior, he had a really good run there, and was hitting some of my region's best players with Mii Sword Fighter tricks I had never seen. I remember saying to some friends that I was going to lose the first set I played against this guy. Over 2 years have passed since that statement, and I had never encountered him until this moment. Even scarier is that I was still in best of 3 territory, meaning I would have limited time to figure out what his character was doing. I had only played against Mii Sword Fighter a couple of times, and knew very little about the matchup. I knew DI out to avoid down throw up air, that Zair didn't beat the tornado, and that the flurry up B could kill me at any percent if I'm not careful while recovering. At least, that was all I knew until about 30 minutes before my pool. That best of 5 set that I had played to warm up just prior to my pool starting was against Fortune, an Ohio Mii Sword Fighter player and possibly the only other one in the entire venue. Although he was running a very different set and very nearly beat me in the best of 5 we played, he explained a lot of what I was doing wrong, as well as explaining how the specials he thought Scrubbed Out would run worked. Thanks to his help, I was very confident in my game plan going in, and won 2-0 without letting it get too close. I got a little less than an hour break before I had to play round 2 pools at 8 PM. Making it out of round 1 pools was only the first test of the day, but it was an important one. I personally think I'm a much stronger player in best of 5, and always feel more comfortable in that part of bracket, despite the opponents I encounter usually being more highly seeded. Unfortunately, that comfort vanished once I found out who my first opponent of the day was. Suspect, a PR Kazuya player from Michigan. This set had me even more stressed out than the scrubbed out set. Those who follow me on Twitter, which is linked on the screen for those who don't, know how much I hate fighting Kazuya. If Terry counts as a Dark Souls boss, Kazuya is the final one. He has everything I hate fighting. Touch of death combos with little to no counterplay, random iframes, aimbot, all while being very good. I don't think I tilt easily, but if any character was going to do it, it was this one. I have a recent history of losing in pretty tragic fashion to this character, and the chances it happened again at Riptide were now very real. I did have a couple of things going for me though. Suspect had been my projected opponent in the week leading up to Riptide, so I had done some prep work on the matchup with some help from Egaz and Shu, the ZSS main from Colorado, with a positive record against Riddles. I had also beaten Suspect in the previous sets I had played against him at smaller regionals. Unfortunately, while I had lots of ideas about the matchup from the previous week, I hadn't found any time to practice implementing them versus any Kazuyas, and Suspect had gotten a lot better since our last set. I decided to play ZSS, since most of the ideas that Egaz and Shu had passed to me were about her, and went into the set prioritizing trying these new ideas, and remembering that my mindset going into this tournament was to focus on learning and not winning. Simply having a plan at all made playing the set so much easier, as at least I knew what I was supposed to be doing regardless of how I executed. The set started out great. I was sticking to my game plan, and many of the ideas were working. I was poised to win game 1, right until I got grabbed at 0. Dead. Despite having DI mix-ups and platforms to potentially throw him off, Suspect didn't drop the combo anywhere and took me off the top to make a huge comeback. I could feel my frustration with Kazuya boiling inside of me. I felt like I had done everything right and lost regardless. But I kept my head in it by taking a deep breath and focused on the fact that the game plan was working. I had just screwed up in a few crucial spots. I won game 2. Game 3 something changes though. He takes me to Smashville, and my defensive play falls apart. Much of my game plan had revolved around maintaining a safe distance from Kazuya, but the stage was much too small for me to do it as long as I needed to. I get 3-stocked. I'm down 2-1, and I know he'll be able to take me back there even if I manage to bring it to a game 5. Game 4 starts badly too. It had been pretty even until he hit me with an early electric on the PS2 platform and killed me with a DI mix-up off the top. In hindsight, this is where I would have completely fallen apart at any other tournament I'd played in up to this point. But somehow, I kept my head in it and brought it back to a win. Game 5, I decide to leave Smashville open again, not wanting to risk playing without platforms on any of the FD layout stages, which give Kazuya even easier 0-to-death combos. But this time, I had a plan. I decided to try and use the stage layout to my advantage and be the aggressor. I was banking on playing ZSS more to my strengths, and that the pace change would throw him off long enough for me to get one more game. It got extremely close, but the plan worked and I narrowly avoided another upset. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this set. On one hand, I was proud of my ability to keep my head in it despite all of the opportunities that Kazuya gave me to tilt, but I also don't think I implemented the ideas I had prepared particularly well, and even gave up on them when my back was to the wall. Had this been a local, I would have been pretty disappointed in myself, but an event like Riptide, I wasn't going to beat myself up for doing whatever I had to get to the next round. My next set was my first stream set of the entire tournament. My projected opponent had been Sharp, the multi-main from New England. Me and Sharp have a lot of respect for each other, and ZSS is one of the best characters on his roster, so I knew he understood her well. He hadn't been able to make it to Riptide, however, so my next opponent instead was Crows, a strong Mega Man player from South Dakota. I had played him in friendlies at the Midwest Ultimate Invitational earlier this summer, though mainly with my Wolf. Mega Man is a matchup that scared me much less than my previous opponents, and I knew I was projected to win. Frankly, after the Suspect set, I was just happy to be there. I felt like I was in control the entire time despite throwing game 2 by accidentally directional air dodging off stage, and mistiming a bunch of attacks that cost me guaranteed damage. Game 4, I finally time an aerial correctly on a tech chase, and get a huge lead with an early ladder that wins me the set. I finally made it to where I was up against the first opponent projected to beat me. Just like in Squad Strike the day before, my opponent standing in the way of top 16 winners was Mutace. Apart from our encounter at Squads, we had also played at Gateway Legends where he had knocked me out at 13th. Our set there was pretty brutal, and it shattered a lot of the assumptions I had about the Peach matchup up to that point. I had a lot less confidence going into the set here than I had at Gateway, but at least this time I knew what I was getting into. The first game resembled our previous set, and he beat me pretty badly. I knew I could play better though. Hitting Mutace was so difficult that I decided to stop focusing on it. Rather, I decided to focus on not giving away any more stocks for free. It doesn't seem like a winning strategy, but it was the important thing for me to focus on. Zero Suit's strongest attribute is her movement, and Mutace was exposing how much I had to learn with it by calling out my patterns with ease. Playing more conscious of my movement helped my survivability and gave me more opportunities to counter hit when he whiffed. I got a huge lead by trading my first stock for his second as he whiffed on edgeguard, evidence that my survival strategy was working. A misinput getting me side B instead of up B off stage cost me my lead, however. And once again, the feeling of the game slipping away from me caused me to get desperate and forget my game plan, and I started fishing for kills. Mute, being the top player, didn't crack like me, and wins the last hit situation by putting me in some Steve-esque turnip contraption, and I go down 2-0. I was kicking myself for this, but I was also happy, because I knew my game plan was working. Game 3, I stuck to it much better and secured an early lead again, this time holding it all the way through. Game 4, I wasn't able to get that lead, but I still did a great job of holding on as long as possible without letting him snowball it out of control. Unfortunately, I was never able to get that lead back, and he won the set 3-1. Despite losing the set, I was happy with how I played overall, especially in the second half, and I felt optimistic on the off chance that we played again. I checked my losers bracket to find my final opponent for day 3. Win here and I would play in top 16 tomorrow, or lose and I would be out of the tournament entirely. Fortunately, my losers bracket didn't have any major upsets in it, and I was seeded to beat all 3 remaining players in it. Those players were Sirdank, the Captain Falcon from Chicago, Low 1, the Wario from Michigan, and... oh no. Suspect. The Kazuya I had sent the losers 2 rounds of winners prior had been making a run. And he didn't stop. He beat both Sirdank and Low 1, and I found myself in a run back against one of my least favorite characters in the game, and the closest I had come to losing all day besides Mutace. The set was one of the last sets of the entire day. The stream had already closed off, and only a few other 17th place matches were happening. A whole crowd of Michigan players, far more than had been watching in winners, gathered behind us. We started the set, and in complete opposite fashion to our winners set, Game 1 starts very poorly for me, until I'm the one who has to hit a 0 to death to make a comeback. Game 2, he takes me to Smashville, and I try the strategy that worked Game 5 of the winners set, and I get 3-stocked again. Fortunately, I go back to the original game plan after that and win Games 3 and 4. While I've talked a lot about my dislike for Kazuya, I want to stress that Suspect was a great opponent, and we were able to laugh about the silliness going on in both of the sets we played. His run this tournament was nothing to scoff at, and I think we both would have preferred to avoid this double jeopardy situation if we could have. I took a huge sigh of relief. I had survived day 1's bloodbath, guaranteed my seed, dodged several close upsets, and had a great set against the number 1 player at the tournament. The fear of underperforming at big events is something I always struggle with, so knowing that I could only overperform from here was a huge boost to my mentality. I wanted to go back to the Kalahari Saturday, as the TOs had managed to secure the venue's water park to have exclusive hours for Riptide attendees until midnight. It was already almost 11 when I had finished playing, however, and I was too hungry to wait until a stop in the park to eat, so yet another opportunity passed me by, but I wasn't too broken up about it. I'd trade a few hours in the water for the stress that had been lifted off my shoulders. Tomorrow I could play in bracket with no fear of losing, and only the desire to keep winning. The feeling in my stomach compared to when I woke up Sunday as opposed to Saturday was night and day. Saturday I was stressed and anxious, whereas Sunday I was calm and focused. Free from the fear of underperforming, instead I was excited and hungry to start making upsets as opposed to dodging them. While Saturday I had to wait most of the day to play, Top 16 of Ultimate started at 2 PM, so I had to be up earlier and ready to play relatively quickly. I still had enough time to catch a couple more rounds of Pittsburgh Regionals though, but I made it to the venue about 30 minutes before I had to play my next opponent, Chase. He was one of the highest seeds of the event, and he was only in my loser's path because of an early upset to Sunnydale. I knew the set was going to be tough, but I felt confident about my chances. Palutena had always been one of my strongest personal matchups, and I had gotten a lot of practice the day before when I was warming up Mutace's Palutena for Squid Plumber. Egaz, being a Palutena player himself, understood Chase's play well, and had sent me a ton of notes the night before. I also knew that SoCal didn't have any ZSS players, and because of that, I had a feeling that Chase was probably more worried about playing me than I was about playing him. I also knew that no one expected me to win, which definitely took a lot of pressure off my shoulders. I struck gold on warm-up again, finding Dawn, Ohio's best Palutena. We didn't get a ton of games before my set, but she definitely helped me get me in the mindset of playing that matchup at high level. At 2 PM, we sat down to play. Of all the sets I played this tournament, this is the one that I wish was streamed the most. It was an incredibly back and forth battle. He took the first game solidly, and I knew I was going to have to pick up my pace. I fired back game 2, but he seemed like he was in a position to win Game 3 until I hit a low percent ladder to steal the game last second. Chase didn't tilt though, and won Game 4, bringing it to a Game 5. This was the game I pulled out every piece of information I had, both from EGAZ and the set so far, and it paid dividends. I was able to secure an early lead and held my stock long enough to get another. Despite the set seemingly being all but over, Chase showed why he was a top player and managed to clean up my first stock and basically 0 to death my second stock, bringing it to a last stock despite the rough start. It was a flashback to the Mute set in Squad Strike 2 days prior, but on a much more important stage. This time, I took the lesson and didn't force anything, and was able to push him to edge and get an air drift read I had been saving off stage to win the set 3-2. It was a huge moment for me. It was my first upset of the entire tournament, and one of my personal best wins ever as a player. Because I was the only Ohio player left in bracket, it felt like the entire scene had been watching, and they all popped off for me once I won. I got a long break before I had to play after this, and once the relief and excitement wore off, the stress returned. I had just realized where I was. One win until top 8. I had only been this close once, at Shine last year, which had felt like more of a regional than a major. Top 8ing a major, or at least a tournament that felt like one, has been a goal of mine ever since I won SOS 7. And suddenly, I realized how possible it seemed. My next opponent was a loser of Icy Mist and Atata, 2 players I had even records against going in. Despite having more sets against Icy Mist, I knew Atata was the better draw for me, and was relieved when Icy won the set. The only set I had lost to Atata was at Frosty Fostings early in 2022, before I had spent a year living with Andrew T., the best Nest player in Ohio. It was a good matchup for Zero Suit, and I knew exactly why. I had notes saved in my phone that I looked over and knew that I should win. But that was the part that got to me. I was so in my own head about how possible top 8ing was for me at this point in the bracket, and the stress was breaking me. Unlike the Chase set where being unfavored took the stress away, feeling like the favorite for such an important threshold added so much more. I did some breathing exercises and waited in the audience to be called. Once we sat down on stream, the first game started very well. I was playing the matchup and evading Ness's hitboxes well and hitting my combos, until the last stock. Once again, I had a massive lead on my hands, but Atata got one opening, and while it didn't kill me, it may as well have. I started panicking and making more mistakes, and eating more unnecessary damage as I fished harder for my confirms, and the game slipped away. It hurt, but I tried to ignore and focus like I had during the first Suspect set, on how the game plan was working. Game 2 went similarly without the ending. I never let it go to last stock, so I never had the chance to throw it away in a panic. Game 3, however, goes exactly like Game 1, with me blowing yet another lead in a last stock scenario. At this point, it's pretty apparent that I'm mentally in pain for kicking myself over how I was letting this slip away from me. And Game 4 starts disastrously. As if like a metaphor for the whole set, I had a huge lead in my first stock, only to misinput side B instead of flip jump and SDing on the way back from an edge guard. Everything in my head is telling me to go get the lead back as fast as possible, but after my invincibility runs out, I manage to restrain myself, not going for any rash edge guards and eventually evening the game back up with ledge trapping. The restraint keeps me from losing any more stocks for the rest of the game, and I bring it to Game 5. Here it's important to remember that Smash is a 2-player game, and while I've been talking about all the stress that I was dealing with up to this point, I'm sure he was dealing with it the whole time as well. If there's any game where the pressure got to him more than he got to me, it was this last one. After I got the first stock, he spent the rest of the game trying to force a kill, and ZSS's annoying evasiveness worked in my favor here. I think we both knew how real of a chance he had if he was able to create another last stock situation like he had in the previous 2 games he won, but I never gave him the chance, and won with another 2 stock. I never pop off in singles. While I understand what causes people to do it, I just never really feel that way. My feeling after a close set is always relief in the way that makes me just want to sit back in my chair and pass out, as opposed to jump out of it and start screaming. This set, I felt what makes people pop off. I do a small double fist bump as I realize I had just finally done it. I had made top 8 at a major. The feeling I had the rest of the day mirrors the way I had felt in the time between the Suspect and the Chase set. Once again, I felt no stress or anxiety about the rest of bracket and was just so happy to be where I was. To have my first top 8 at an Ohio major, even a small one, was something out of a storybook dream for me. I went for a walk around the venue with Emma and found some grass to collapse on and just enjoy the moment. We walked around a little more and returned to the venue where we watched the rest of Melee top 8 and enjoyed a plup W. To prepare for top 8, I read through more notes from EGAZ, this time about my next opponent, Lima. As a top Ohio player and a player for Fear, it's impossible for me to not know Bayonetta at this point. I have 20 sets against Geist, and have played several other high and top level Bayos, including Lima, at Gateway Legends. Unfortunately, of 20 of those sets with Geist, I've lost 18 of them, and also lost to Lima, though it had been a Game 5. Bayonetta is a difficult matchup for ZSS in a lot of ways. ABK is the perfect neutral tool against a tall character with a primarily aerial-based game plan like ZSS. Even worse, she has terrible punishes on Bayonetta due to her frame 1 air dodge, and Zero Suit's grab usually being too slow to grab Bayonetta's special lag on reaction, forcing me to go for other punishes that are either less rewarding or risk getting witch time. After enough consecutive lost sets to Geist, I had decided to give up on the matchup and learn it on Pokemon Trainer. Pokemon Trainer objectively does much better due to Squirtle being much more difficult for her to hit, and all 3 Pokemon having consistent, reliable punishes with better grabs and more true combos. The reason why it took me so long to try this matchup, however, is very clear in Game 1 of my set versus Lima. They get blown up really easily. Pokemon Trainer's disadvantage is poor in general, but offstage and in her combos, they are far more abusable than ZSS's. I generally would rather play losing matchups on ZSS over even matchups on PT, because I like how many more chances ZSS gets to figure an opponent out. After Game 1, I'm pretty sure the entire venue expected ZSS to come back out, as it was who I had almost beaten Lima with before, and I hadn't played any Pokemon Trainer all tournament up until this point. But after thinking about it for a little bit, I opted to stay PT. I didn't think it was the character that caused me to lose, but rather how I played them. Squirtle is the reason why Pokemon Trainer does well in the Bayonetta, but after losing the first stock in Game 1, I had refused to switch back to him, trying to get the stock lead back, only allowing Lima to snowball me for an easy win. The next game, I wanted to try to stick to the game plan, and I was immediately tested on it. Lima gets another early stock off stage in just over 30 seconds. This time, however, I didn't budge and managed to get the lead back with just Squirtle after an early 2-frame. Pokemon Trainer has always been a character I struggled to play at high level. They were my main early ultimate, and I love using them, but the disadvantage state of Pokemon Trainer always made me feel like I was walking a tightrope over a canyon whenever I had to fight players with competent advantage states. Against really high-level opponents, I feel like I get 3 mistakes a match, and it's just over before I can ever get a chance to play. There's one thing about my Pokemon Trainer I am really proud of, however, and that is my Squirtle. I genuinely believe when I'm comfortable with them, I have the best Squirtle in the world, and the Lima set would be my argument for it. During the rest of the set, so many of my strengths came out. Even after losing Game 3 and going down 2-1 for the 4th time this tournament, I was playing in a way I don't even think most of Ohio knew I could with them. My neutral was at its best. I was making smash attack callouts, ledge trapping Bayo, and hitting extremely niche combos and setups. After Game 3, Lima jokes with me and asks if there's any other randomly crazy pocket characters I was going to surprise him with. I laugh and say no as he surprises me instead with his Vans. He leaves FD open. I'm shocked as I know this is one of Bayonetta's worst stages and a really strong one for Squirtle at the same time. There is a catch though, and I'm not sure if Lima knew this about me. I personally hate FD, not even just for Pokemon Trainer, just in general. I think the stage is incredibly boring and polarizing, and platforms are one of my biggest strengths as a player. But Bayonetta uses platforms even better than I do, giving her layers of mix-ups to her disadvantage that save her free from punishes on her special leg. Despite my misgivings, I take him there, trusting my mind over my heart. The fact that Game 4 was as close as it was says a lot about Lima's skill as a player. I stick to the game plan, boosted by the layout of the stage, rewarding grounded Squirtle neutral even harder, and maintain a solid lead until the last stock where the game starts spiraling out of my control. It was all going great until I hit this F-tilt and dashed to see what his option was. He air dodges, which shocked me because had I been ready, I could have just down smashed him on reaction to win the game. Realizing that my shock caused me to be too late, I opt for Waterfall instead as it's faster, but I was still too slow. And it nearly cost me everything. In the next 30 seconds, I narrowly avoid the Blast Zone, Killspark after Killspark. He catches my jump as I try to switch to Ivysaur to recover, forcing me to Flare Blitz high, eating another F-Smash just to touch the ground again. I armor his Nair, allowing me to get back to stage and flip the script on him, and after a whiffed ABK off edge, I have him, as I bait out the downer with the dash dance and prepare to up smash it, only to have my tail get caught and nearly die again to a back air. I use my jumps early to keep the option of recovering high available, should he decide to cover a fastball to go low. He does, and I take the window of opportunity to flare blitz to the other end of the stage. He chases, but realizes he isn't in time, and I dash forward to feign trying to take space with run shield, but he expects this, and I expect him to expect it. I do one more dash dance and evade his grab to get my own in turn, bringing it to game 5 one more time in this Riptide win. The crowd is going crazy at this point. Lima and I have another laugh as we try to guess what instrument is playing in the crowd. He guesses a trumpet, and I jokingly guess bagpipes as we laugh one more time before he picks PS2 in game 5. In the amount of time it took for Lima to take my first stock in game 2 is the amount of time we took to hit each other in game 5. But while normally impatience is a hallmark and flaw of my ZSS, on Squirtle, that day was my virtue. And I get the first hit, converting it into huge damage. I get another, and then another, until finally Lima gets one opening and kills me off of it. This was definitely an SD, but it was a forced error. Lima's pressure off stage causes me to rush my recovery, and I accidentally input just Flare Blitz instead of double jump up B, and that lead that I'd worked so hard for vanished. But once again, I knew what I had to do to stay in it. I went back to Squirtle and kept doing exactly what I had been the previous stock. I even it back up with a ledge trap. The second stock stays close until I nearly die to a ladder, being saved by DI up, forcing Lima to double jump early to continue the combo, which made him unable to finish it lethally. I narrowly avoid an edge guard with the well-timed switch, but die to a witch time on a flamethrower. Once again, I don't rush anything and take the stock with Squirtle on another ledge trap. Last stock, game 5. And we trade low percent combos, keeping it even until Lima uses a cool trick with his fair to sneak back on stage and flip an edge guard on me. I narrowly avoid his edge guard with another perfectly timed switch. Lima hits a combo starter, and knowing that I DI'd up last time, I try to mix him up by doing down and out. In the moment, I think I trick him, seeing him double jump fair in the blast zone, which I nearly take his stock for. As it turns out, he saw my DI and was prepared to hit it, and the double jump was an unfortunate misinput. In hindsight, DIing out at all even to mix him up in this situation was definitely a mistake, and I very easily could have lost here. Regardless, we both survive the situation, and the percents on both of us keep on climbing. Until one fateful moment where I aggressively dash at him after he misses a tech chase, looking to see if he'll give me the mistake that every Charizard dreams for. He jumps. And in the player cam, I jump with him. I up smash and win the set as the crowd behind us finally jumps as well. Of all the sets I played this weekend, none of them had made me happier than this one. To be in top 8 was a surprise that had already made my weekend, but to continue on and win another set in it shocked everyone and no one more than me. But more than any win or placing, what made me happy was how my Pokemon Trainer played. That set is the best gameplay I've ever had on Pokemon Trainer, and the first time since Riptide 2 years ago that I think I really showed my skill on them versus a player of that caliber. I had always known I was capable of going toe-to-toe with the best with PT, but so many sets lost due to poor disadvantage and impatience had almost made me give up on it. After hugging friends in the crowd, I go to the back of the venue to unwind. I was ecstatic to be in bracket for so long, but that set made me realize that I could win this entire tournament. Even from losers, I didn't think there was anyone left that I didn't have it in me to beat twice with the way I was playing against Lima. But my next set was going to test this newfound confidence. Aaron, the Diddy player, had upset Mutace in winners, placing the 1 seed, the only person to beat me in this entire tournament, back in my bracket path. And I wasn't ready. I don't have a ton to say about this last set. I played a lot of the best players in the world, MK Leo, Tweak, Shuton, and so on. None of them felt close to as difficult as Mutace playing high. And that Aaron set clearly flipped the switch on him. Once again, I found myself finishing in bracket too late to have time for the water park. And our hotel room was only from Thursday night to Saturday night, making this the first year I ever missed the slides. Not that I'd trade my top 8 this year for those slides or for anything else. I'll be sure to plan for the top 8 next year. Thank you so much for getting this far. Riptide weekend was an amazing experience. We wanted to get out a recap video, but we weren't sure how to go about it. Like I hinted in the video with Pittsburgh Regionals, I like to follow Pokemon VGC, and Wolf Glick's tournament recaps are some of my favorite content on YouTube. They always have so much care going into their editing, and Wolf really knows how to turn a weekend of games into an engaging story. Because this weekend was so important to me, I wanted to see if me and the Fear team could put a similar amount of effort in telling this story, to see if this kind of content would work for Smash as well, with our own spin on it. If you want more of this kind of content, please hit the like button, subscribe to the Cincy Fear YouTube channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Special thanks to Cincy Fear, my friends, and everyone who supported me this weekend.
You all in your own essential way make my tournaments and runs like these possible. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.